Hello, Freshman Theology. It is our weekly update video time for our second week here of online school. So this is our update for the week of March 23rd, which is today, the Monday, through March 29th, the Sunday at the end of this week. I just wanted to, as I'll do each week, put a video together talking through what it is we're doing this week. And then occasionally we'll use to do lessons. Last week I used a lot of the video, a longer one, to be able to talk through some portions of Mark 1 through 8 with you. This week I'm just going to kind of send what would be my lesson notes for Mark 8 through 16 on, which you can find in the digital resources section of this lesson on our Plus Portals class page in the lesson plans. So that you can kind of work your way through. Because I know for some of you, you're finishing up and working through the back half of Mark this week for your Mark reading guides. So I just want to start by saying everything due and needed to work on this week, and then we'll kind of close with some statements on what you'll find in this back half of the Gospel of Mark. For this week, things you need to do. Watch this video. After doing this video, take down the notes from Mark 8 through 16, which I've posted in our class page in the digital resources for this lesson. Work your way to turnitin.com to type up responses for two assignments that are listed there for this week, which is Mark Response 4, Mark Response 5. These are overall responses getting you to take the whole Gospel of Mark into account to write responses on two things. The first one is in Mark Response 4, who is Jesus according to the Gospel of Mark? I want you to be specific. Use some of the things we've talked about in our notes and in our discussions. What does the book of Mark tell you about who Jesus is? And give some examples on why you say what you say. The second question then that you're asking or answering in Mark Response 5 is, how do Jesus' actions and words shape your understanding of God? Part of why Jesus shows up, if Jesus is who he says he is, right? If Jesus is God become man, the Son of God, the living, walking embodiment of God, then everything that Jesus does and says is what God does and says. And we've pointed out a couple examples where how Jesus is reflecting how God had always been. But Jesus is also there to clarify what people were getting wrong about who God was. The Pharisees being wrong about God creating boundaries, about God being overly legalistic. That's not what and how God is. God is opening arms to people who otherwise were being rejected and kept away from what God is trying to do. So, how do Jesus' actions and words in Mark shape your understanding of God? Those are assignments that you're submitting just to me directly. Each should be around a paragraph because you should be using good, clear, specific stuff from the book, stuff from our notes to help shape your responses. Once you've finished up those assignments, then head on over to the discussions tab on turnitin.com, and there are 4 different discussions for you to type responses to. The first one you'll see is titled Palm Sunday. The next one is the cleansing of the temple. The next is Jesus' crucifixion. And the last is based off of Jesus' resurrection, or how Mark kind of goes about the whole empty tomb scenario. Each of those then has a prompt for you to respond to. I'm looking for somewhere around 3 sentences for each in terms of responses. This week, you do not need to respond to any other classmates unless you'd like to. If you'd like to reply to someone's posts, feel free. It's not going to be part of your grade this week, but moving forward, next week on, I am going to have you all start kind of interacting with each other in your discussions. So it wouldn't hurt to practice that now and just kind of get used to talking to each other through your online posts. That is it for what it is that you're all working through this week. So Mark 8 through 16. Remember, if you haven't gotten it to me yet, your Mark reading guides are due by the end of this weekend, which you can email to me either typed or with pictures of if you did it by hand. Either way is fine. Thank you to those of you who have gotten those in up to this point. I would really strongly recommend that you try to do this, all of what's assigned this week, in a kind of piece-by-piece stretch. Try to get through the reading guide in the next few days. Get through your Mark 4 and 5, Mark Response 4 and Mark Response 5 assignments by Wednesday, if possible, and then your discussions by Saturday, if possible, just to kind of pace yourself out so you're not stacking too much work to do all in 1 week stretch. With that, Mark 8 through 16, if I could just kind of send you off into those chapters with a couple words and thoughts. Look for the ways in which Jesus is constantly kind of surprising what people are expecting him to say or do. Look at the ways in which Jesus is always seemingly bringing healing and restoration, even when Jesus is acting with like either anger or Jesus is correcting people. For example, in the cleansing of the temple story. The ways in which Jesus is acting is always trying to break down barriers between God and people. Always. Whether that's healing people's actual physical health issues. He's healing them to redeem them, restore their humanity. Or Jesus is messing up the systems in the temple that were trying to keep people out of the temple for like financial reasons. Jesus is breaking down barriers that were keeping people from God, that God never intended to have be a thing in the first place. The Jesus that Mark talks to us about in this book is a Jesus that, if we choose to follow, is going to lead us on a path that's often opposite to what we expect. Think of the people in the Palm Sunday story. They're celebrating Jesus as he walks into Jerusalem because they think that he's a warrior king who's going to actually lead an armed rebellion against Rome so that God's kingdom on earth can be an actual real kingdom with power and glory. But the glory of Jesus is found in the cross. It's through Jesus' death, his sacrifice, his walk to the cross, being beaten and whipped and torn apart. It's in that death and that violence and that pain that Jesus' glory is realized. The Roman centurion who sees Jesus dead on the cross, beaten, ripped open, and it's then that this Roman centurion gets it and says, surely this man was the Son of God. It's in Jesus' death that his glory is revealed. Jesus isn't this conquering warrior. He's described as a suffering servant. So as you work through these last portions of Mark, remember that the Jesus we're learning about is a suffering servant. And that's a difficult path to walk. But what we're doing along the way as we walk that path is learning to love the Lord our God and love each other as we love ourselves. It's a path that's filled with self-sacrificial love. The kingdom of God is that. It's self-sacrificial love. And that's possible here and now. So maybe this week and moving onward, if you're mostly in your home the next few weeks, it might be a difficult time to kind of think through the whole, how do we follow Jesus in the midst of now? One thing you all have that is not been a thing for all of human history, you guys have the opportunity to keep in touch with each other. You have the ability to communicate with each other. We have the ability at Valley to do online chapels. And if you didn't get to watch the first one, we're going to try twice a week, Pastor Jamie and I doing online chapels, which we'll post to YouTube in a YouTube channel. It's a worship VLHS, I believe is what it's called. But we're putting up chapels. We have the ability to try to stay in community together, even if we're physically apart. So look for ways in which you can be a self-sacrificial servant, showing love to the people around you, because that's what Jesus is inviting you into, and that's where the glory of Christ is found. That's what the kingdom of God is all about. Blessings to you guys on your week. May Christ's peace, love, and joy be with you as you're trying to kind of figure out this whole system of online, as we're shifting towards what's really new for a lot of us, but as we still try to learn and grow together. God's blessings, guys, and see you in our next video next week. In the meantime, off to all of those online assignments and discussion posts.